HIMARS are in Ukraine, thanks to my American colleague and the Secretary of Defense Lloyd J. Austin III for this powerful military help.
Високоточна зброя типу HIMARS – це дуже суттєва перевага.
High-precision weapons, such as HIMARS, is a very significant advantage.
Логічний, так? Перше, що був зрозуміло було, що
Starting from the psychological point of view, it was clear that the countries of the West are now with us, and ending with the fact that this is really a weapon different from the one that the enemy has.
залпового вогню вони не високоточні.
Because their volley fire systems are not highly accurate, they hit certain squares, but it's not the fact that there is what they wanted to hit there.
Але
These are Soviet systems of 60s, 70s. The last time they were developed in the 80s. Ukrainians demonstrated their mastery with this technique.
80-х років розробки. Українці показали
Several months are needed to master HIMARS, and the Ukrainians need only a few weeks. It is a weapon that has changed the course of warfare.
і вона у нас є, у них її немає. Наш підрозділ на той момент займав один із районів.
Our unit then occupied one of these areas in the defense sector of Severodonetsk.
30-60.
Every day, 30-60 of their soldiers died,
Ну і множте на 2 поранені, відірвані ноги, руки там і так далі.
and multiply wounded.
Ну, звісно, Білогорівська їхня операція, напевно, там 100
Don't forget about the Battle of Bilogorivka.
стрілецьких їхніх. Вони як ті, що
They moved like rats on that crossing, and they were hit by 4 brigades working with artillery.
бригади, 4 бригади працювали.
During the day, 6-8 drones were destroyed.
В день могло іти
Why it was important to keep Severodonetsk?
засобів БПЛА. Чому було важливо втримати Сєвєродонецьк? Тому що якщо б
Since the units would not have carried out defense there, most of the troops could be transferred to Kyiv, the Dnipro, etc.
більшість військ на той момент могла би бути перекинута під Київ, під Запоріжжя.
At the same time, the heroic defense of Kyiv was going on,
Якраз тривала також героїчна оборона Київщини,
and it was very important to keep the defense there.
тримати там оборону. І люди це розуміли, людьми, коли там
When we talk about the position,
вони переживали, як там
Ukrainian defenders were worried about their families, who were at the time at Hostomel, Bucha, Irpin.
потім вище
The leadership decided that Severodonetsk could be left and moved to the right bank of the Donets River.
здійснити перегрупування на правий берег річки Сєвєродонецьк.
Це колосальне, це величезне значення. Якби не
It
виснаження,
was important to exhaust them near Severodonetsk, otherwise they would have reached the Donetsk region. We would already be talking about the battles near Pavlograd.
я не знаю, десь під Павлоградом. У них
Their goal is to intimidate on the one hand, so the people would be afraid to go out. By the way, in this context, Putin didn't come up with anything new. His methods are the same that Hitler had. In 1944-45, the German industry spent colossal forces, resources, and funds on creation of Foul-2 missiles, which were fired at London. Although from a military point of view, it didn't make any sense.
Це не мало жодного сенсу.
Успіх з повернення острова
The success with the return of Zmyny Island was achieved by the impressive creativity of the armed forces of Ukraine.
Збройних сил України. Про це мало хто знає, але
Few people know that the weapons provided to us couldn't change the situation. The howitzers and self-propelled artillery installations that we had did not reach Zmyny Island.
установки, які в нас були, вони не дострілювали, на жаль, до острова Зміїни. Тому
This is why the Ukrainian military stationed Bogdana on a platform that floated out into the sea, from which the blows were made.
яка випливала в море, і з неї наносилися удари по Зміїну.
We started bombarding the island. In this way, the Russians realized that there was no chance of holding it.
Ну, росіяни зрозуміли, що ніяких шансів його втримати немає.
On June 30th, as a gesture of goodwill, the Russian armed forces completed the assigned tasks on Zmyny Island and withdrew the garrison station there.
Не існує ніяких жестів.
There were no gestures of goodwill. All the retreats that the Russian army made were inevitable.
Робила російська армія, були просто неминучими.
As for Chornobayivka, Russia concentrated its military helicopters there. There is an airfield there, and it was easy to do. Accordingly, there was the supply of ammunition, missiles for helicopters. They thought that they would pass Mykolaiv in a few days and go to Odessa. In fact, logistics were suitable, but they were stopped, and the counterattack started.
Але їх зупинили і почали наносити контрудари.
Там один раз прилетіло. Ну, вони подумали, мабуть, по принципу, що
Apparently, they thought one shell funnel twice doesn't fall. But they were wrong, and ours bombed the airfield again. Then they brought it in a third time, set up some kind of air defense system to shoot something down, and it didn't help them again. Why? Because our armed forces were changing approaches to the enemy. First, they used hailstones there, then artillery, then the HIMARS appeared. Then there were drones and, of course, subversive groups. They never could guess what exactly will happen next. On the one hand, this is a meme that then appeared in our information space, such a very positive meme, but on the other hand, it seems to me that Chornobayivka is a sentence or a diagnosis, it would be better to say. This is the diagnosis of the Russian army.
це діагноз російської армії.
Это было целое здание.
It was a whole building. Then there were screams and explosions.
Рот!
Влучили вони ракетою, звичайно. Да.
They hit with a missile.
Звичайно, ну, знаєте,
During these 8 years until 2022, people could live normal life.
по 2022 рік. Все одно, хоч там...
Missile attack on the officer's house in Vinnytsia. 27 people died.
Але все одно кудись десь прилітало.
У них от іноді такі все ж таки влучання.
Due to their stupidity, sometimes they can do strange things. They informed in public about completed mission. Then they realized that they were idiots.
Розуміли, що вони ідіоти. Вони от реально вважали, що будинок офіцерів.
They really believe that it is the place where officers are located, sort of the headquarters.
Що у нас по всій Україні, от в Києві,
Russians don't even understand that we have such concert halls all over Ukraine. In Kyiv, for example, well, I wouldn't be surprised if they considered Vinnytsia officer house as NATO base.
ну, я не здивуюся, що вони от в Вінниці могли думати, що це якась там база НАТО.
Члени Конгресу, для мене дуже велика честь і привілей представити вам першу леді України Олену Зеленську. Слава Україні!
Good morning.
I know this is for the first time that the president's wife of another country can address Congress within these walls. Usually the first ladies are engaged in peaceful affairs, education, human rights. I think that you expected me to speak on such topics today, but how can I talk about them when an unprovoked terrorist war is going on against my country?
Я думаю, що ви очікували від мене сьогодні виступу саме на такі теми. Але як про них можна говорити, коли проти твоєї країни іде неспровокована загарбницька терористична війна?
This is an unprecedented case. I don't remember another such in history. I think it was the first one. Of course, there was great interest in Mrs. Zelenska, how much her husband has become one of the main characters in the world. Before that, she was little known. Many people wanted to see her.
Я зараз прошу річ, яку я б ніколи не
I am asking for something that I would never want to ask. I ask you for weapons.
щоб нести війну на чужу землю. А щоб
The weapon is not to bring war to a foreign land, but to protect our home and the right to wake up alive.
повітряну оборону. щоб ракети не вбивали.
I ask you for air defense systems so that missiles do not kill our children, so that they don't destroy children's rooms and families.
Цього прошу я і просить мій чоловік.
This is what we ask, not as a presidential spouses, but as a parents of their children.
І батьки своїх дітей.
She is not only the first lady of Ukraine, not only the wife of President Zelenskyy, but also the mother of Ukrainian children who sincerely said, "We need this. I don't want to ask for weapons, but we need them now." This, of course, was very resonant.
Дівчинка Ліза. Лізі було всього 4 роки.
This is Lisa.
Вже немає. Ось фото.
She was only 4 years old. On July 14,
липня Ліза була вбита.
Lisa was killed by a Russian missile attack in Vinnytsia city, which is in the center of Ukraine.
України, місто Вінниця. На цій фотографії Єва.
This is Eva. She was 5 years old. She was killed by a Russian missile.
Їй було 5 років. Чергова російська ракета.
В даному випадку не можна порівнювати взагалі з
In this case, it is impossible to compare Zelenska's speech and any of Putin's.
будь-якої
Here we see a person who lives in the country where the war is.
Тут ми бачимо людину, яка безпосередньо все це прожила.
The impact of the appeal is enormous because for Western democracies, the human component is of great
Для
importance.
країн все ж таки демократичних величезне значення має оцей людський компонент.
Слава Україні!
Ну і плюс тут
Well, there are parallels with Golda Meir's address to the Jewish Congress many years ago during her visit to American Jewish community,
Конгресу багато років
where she said, "We will defend ourselves regardless of whether you give us weapons or not.
і сказали, ми будемо захищатися,
We will defend our own country. It is better with weapons, but if you don't give them, we will do it without."
власну країну.
The Black Sea Grain Agreement.
Якщо не дасте, будемо і без зброї.
Важливою подією року слід визнати зернову угоду. Тому що для
The Grain Agreement is an important event of the year, and in fact, it was such a serious defeat for the Russians.
Тобто, ще раз, якщо до того з нами розмовляли тільки мовою ультиматуму,
Therefore, they used only the language of ultimatums and threats, and then
пішли на цю зернову угоду.
this agreement came. They couldn't stop it. This was the same first result, including providing us with the powerful anti-ship missiles that would destroy Russian fleet again when they tried to block this grain corridor.
Це був такий же ж теж результат, в тому числі надання нам протикорабельних ракет потужних, які знищили б.
That is why it was a defeat for Putin and Erdogan's victory.
Тому це була така поразка Путіна, перемога Ердогана.
Оленівка – це був військовий злочин.
Olenivka is a Russian war crime. Several hundred people died.
Де були полонені, вони було знищені.
This was a penal colony. It was destroyed.
Росіяни це зробили. Вони зробили там
According to some reports, the Russians made a fire explosion there in order to kill our military, Ukrainians who were in captivity.
звинуватити в цьому Україну, що нібито Україна.
They even blamed Ukraine for this.
І це от теж підступна.
This is also an insidious and worthy tactic of Russians.
Це була спроба налякати, деморалізувати українських військових. Що
Moreover, it was an attempt to scare and demoralize the Ukrainian military. They do not let the Red Cross or other representatives of international organizations to this place.
ні Червоний Хрест, ні інших представників міжнародних організацій.
Це, власне, була демонстрація можливості.
It was a demonstration of the armed forces of Ukraine on the deoccupation of Crimea. At that time, Ukraine made it clear that the concept of the return of Crimea was considered not only in the diplomatic sphere.
Ми наполягали попередня, але й відповідно ми дали
on which we had previously insisted, but we made it clear to the Russian Federation that not returning Crimea is a military scenario. Despite all the warnings from the Western countries that the military scenario for the liberation of Crimea is the so-called red line and the possibility of implementing a nuclear scenario from the side of the Russian Federation.
Російської Федерації. І головне, українська сторона.
The Ukrainian side made it clear that the change of the national composition in the territory of the occupied Crimea, speaking of those who left the Russian Federation, is considered by the Ukrainian side as an impossible scenario.
Розглядається українською стороною як
According to the citizens of the Russian Federation who occupied houses of Ukrainians who were forced to leave their own homes, they made it clear the possible further scenarios.
українців, які були змушені покинути власне житло, дали зрозуміти можливі подальші сценарії. Тому всі ми спостерігаємо.
That is why there were many kilometers of queues at the Kerch Bridge in the direction of the Russian Federation.
Напрямок саме Російської Федерації.
Мамулечка, давай, надо сваливать отсюда. Тихо, тихо, тихо. И потом, что надо ехать. Нет, это уже какой-то трэш. Мам, да домик ничего нам не сделает, твой деревянный домик. Пока не поздно, мама!
Їм обіцяли, що війна не торкнеться Криму.
They were promised that the war would not touch the Crimea. They don't care about people going to war if it doesn't concern them.
Якщо вона втилиться. І коли почалися вибухи.
And after explosions in the Crimea, it became a disappointment for them because they were deceived.
Ми однозначно повернемо Крим.
We will definitely return the Crimea. Now it no longer seems like myth.
Вообще не хочу уезжать из Крыма из-за Алушты. Как здесь классно.
Привыкла, да?
Я привыкла здесь, как в своем доме жили. Настолько все душевно, по-домашнему.
Це було похідна від російської, скажімо так.
It was derived from Russian, this totalitarian-driven propaganda.
Пропаганда, коли вона змушена діяти не
When it is forced to act not proactively but reactively.
А реактивно, коли по ним б'ють, і їм потрібна якась така, скажімо, швидка реакція, щоб не сказати, що ми...
You know, the new meaning of the word explosion, a cotton.
Замість вибух поняття хлопок. І хтось з дотепників українських, я не знаю, хто це.
And it became one of the symbols of our struggle.
В українській транслітерації як бавовна. І воно вже стало певним таким одним із символів нашої боротьби.
Пес патрон.
The dog patron, the Crimean bridge, cotton, which has become just a meme, and a huge amount of other symbols appeared in this month.
Символіки, вона виникла саме в ці місяці, і вона не могла не виникнути. Ми маємо.
We must focus on some objects and become the core of emotions and attitudes. We are united by this symbolism. We can take Russian society as an example. They also unite around symbols, but the problem is that they are trying to unite around artificially created symbols.
Навколо символів. Проблема в тому, що вони намагаються об'єднатися навколо символів, які
They come down from above. This is one of the features of Russian symbolism. The other is that they are talking about these symbols of the past. We are creating new ones, and this indicates that our society
символів минулого. Ми створюємо нові. І це свідчення того, що наше суспільство розвивається. Червоний прапор, десантура. Тобто десантники – це еліта російського війська. Чому?
is developing. The red banner, the landing force, is the elite of the Russian army because they were considered the elite of the Soviet army. The song of the Second World War attempts to mobilize the country and the economy. This is the terminology of the middle 20th century.
Оця Z-символіка, коли почалася акція буквою Z, буквою В, це вже перехід через якусь межу, через якусь червону лінію.
The symbolism with the letters Z and V is a red line that cannot be crossed. If you make a symbol out of parts of people's bodies, you thus intervene in the personal space and the restructuring of relations between the state and the population takes place. The state can take your body and do whatever it wants with it. Ukrainians collected money for a satellite.
Відносин держави і населення. Держава може взяти твоє тіло і зробити з ним те, що вона хоче.
Любі українці, цей день настав.
This day has come. We buy Bayraktars. Together we managed to accumulate 600 million hryvnias. The Baykar company undertook to hand over 3 attack drones to Ukraine free of charge. By its action, the Baykar company saved us the entire amount that was collected. The next question, what to spend this money on? Ukrainians, you are the best. We bought a satellite.
Ми купили супутник.
Ми бачимо люди, які чесно, це деколи.
Just imagine, people have collected money for a satellite. Sometimes I think that I'm talking about some kind of science fiction. Ukrainians collect for these Bayraktars several hundred millions.
На супутники. Можете представити, люди на супутник зібрали.
Харківщина – це та операція, яка...
Kharkiv region is the operation that certainly turned the tide of this war after the Kiev. Kharkiv region was also commanded by General Syrsky.
Полковник Олександр Сирський. Перші задумки...
He had his first ideas for this operation back in May. He went to this area.
І саме там йому...
It was there, thanks to non-standard action, to repel the enemy, in fact to liberate the Kharkiv region.
Нестандартності дій...
There it seems that only 1.5% have not been released. This led later to the fact that the enemy had to carry out partial mobilization.
До того, що ворогу довелося проводити так звану цю часткову мобілізацію.
Ще раз дякую усім.
Once again, I want to thank all our fighters who ensured such a large-scale and rapid defeat of the invaders in the territory of the Kharkiv region.
Операція з деокупації Харківської області.
The deoccupation operation of the Kharkiv region proves that the armed forces of Ukraine initiated NATO standards.
Каскадний характер, підготовка.
The nature of military and political assistance from the West has changed qualitatively.
Змінився характер військово-технічної.
It was about providing personal protective equipment and, most importantly,
засобів індивідуального захисту.
offensive weapons began to be provided.
Надавати наступальні.
High-tech weapons that have allowed the liberation of occupied territories.
Дозволяє і дозволяло.
The first tank army of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, which was considered one of the most capable, ceased to exist on the territory of Ukraine.
Припинило своє існування на теренах України.
Я був там, коли тільки звільнилася Харківщина.
I was there as soon as Kharkiv and Liman districts were liberated. We took representatives of the Western press there and demonstrated the presence of Russian torture camps and mass graves with killed Ukrainians, from Bucha and Hostomel to the Kharkiv region.
Бачимо від Бучі і Гостомеля до Харківщини, Ізюму.
To protect our homeland sovereignty and territorial integrity, to ensure the security of our people and those in the liberated territories, I consider it necessary to support the proposal of the Minister of Defense and the General Staff to conduct partial mobilization in the Russian Federation.
Вона, вперше в Росії...
It is for the first time in Russia after the collapse of the Soviet Union.
В Росії навіть не проводилися навчання.
Moreover, Russia did not even conduct large-scale exercises with the gathering of the mobilization reserve, with the deployment of the reserve, which they declared to have millions
Цього
in.
раніше ніколи не робили, тому це дійсно вперше. Але,
They have never done this before. It is our merit that they lacked 175,000-180,000 regular forces practically.
Практично,
More than 70-85% of them were contract workers. This was not enough for them.
їм цього було недостатньо. Часткова мобілізація.
Partial mobilization in Russia is actually the defeat of Putin.
Поразка Путіна. Це особиста його поразка.
This is his personal defeat. Previously, everyone demanded such a mobilization from him in May.
І він на неї не погоджувався по тій простій причині, що
And he didn't agree to it because of the simple reason. To announce the mobilization was in fact to admit the failure of the army.
Це погодився. Він визнав провал російської армії. В шашках є такий
Checkers, there is a technique called Zugzwang, which means that each of your next moves only worsen your situation.
От зараз у Російської Федерації
Now, in the Russian Federation, there is no ideal option from which they could get out. They cannot stop the war in one moment because how will they explain hundreds of thousands die then?
зупинити війну, тому що всередині там можуть...
Therefore, they usually try to secure those territories occupied by them. The great swap between Ukraine and Russia, the defenders of Azovstal were exchanged for Medvedchuk and other Russian prisoners.
За собою ті території, на яких вони вже є.
Російській Федерації
The Russian Federation, on the eve of the exchange, there was a whole hysteria about the possibility of exchanging fighters of the Azov unit.
В Держдумі приймається закон про неможливість
The
проведення.
State Duma adopts a law on the impossibility of exchanges. The investigative committee of the Russian Federation initiates a number of criminal proceedings.
І на тлі цього відбувається обмін.
The relevant Supreme Court of the occupying country makes a decision to recognize the Azov unit as a terrorist organization.
Понижував в першу чергу персональний рейтинг російського диктатора.
But the swap took place. The leadership is being returned to us. Not just rank and file membership, but leadership.
Уявити, який дисонанс в головах росіян відбувся.
The exchange lowered the personal rating of the Russian Federation.
Чому в Турції? Давайте говорити про те, що
If Solovyev began to have questioning about the exchange, you can imagine the dissonance in the minds of Russians at the time of this exchange.
полку Азов, стануть відповідно
Why in Turkey, this is one of the requirements of the Russian Federation.
моральної і вольової.
They fear that the commanders of the Azov unit would become a symbol,
Тому спробували
first of all, of the moral and willful victory, the political victory of the Ukrainian side.
і політичному і військовому.
Therefore, they tried to limit the presence of these commanders directly in the political and military field of Ukraine. How successful are these plans? No, it didn't work. Let's talk about the fact that the Azov unit takes part in the battles of the Bakhmut region as a part of the armed forces of Ukraine.
Сил України.
Денис,
Glory to Ukraine, Mr. President. Everything is fine with us. The state of health is satisfactory. Thanks to you and the whole team for what you have done.
Вам і всій команді за те, що ви зробили.
дякую тобі за те, що ви зробили.
Thank you for what you have already done for Ukraine. We will celebrate our victory together.
І ми обов'язково відзначимо разом перемогу.
По суті справи Медведчук надав всю інформацію, яку від нього потребували.
In fact, Medvedchuk gave all the information that was required of him.
200 хлопців – це була перемога, по-перше, для України.
To take away our 200 guys, it was a victory for Ukraine, for families expecting their heroes.
Не завжди в робах повертаються.
Russians don't always come back. It's just sometimes a stamp of the missing was burned at the Donetsk metallurgical plant, and that's it.
І для того, щоб сім'ї не платити компенсації.
Состоялись референдумы.
Referendums were held and their results were summed up. People have made their choice, an unequivocal choice. Today we are signing agreements on the admission of the Donetsk People's Republic, the Luhansk People's Republic, the Zaporizhzhia region and Kherson region to Russian Federation.
Запорожской области и Херсонской области.
Well, let's say this is a scenario that drives Russia further into the abyss.
Росію в цю прірву, тому що
because they followed the scenario of attempts at illegal annexation. Remember, they said that in Kherson, Russia would be forever.
пам'ятаєте, говорили, що в Херсоні
Or
Росія
referendums somewhere in the Kharkiv region, and they were thwarted due to de-occupation. The greater parts of the Kharkiv region would also be declared. To a great extent, it means nothing to us. We do not recognize it. The whole world does not recognize it. Putin and others signed the illegal treaties.
Ну, нам з цим робити нічого не треба, тому що ми взагалі не розуміємо. Дивіться, вони можуть завтра Аляску він поверне, або напише, що Бордо належить йому, або ще щось. Це є їх велика проблема. Вони ж ні з ким не спілкуються, в них дуже обмежене коле. Коли ви постійно
We
спілкуєтеся...
don't need to do anything with it. We do not understand at all. Look, they can return Alaska tomorrow, or write the Bordeaux belongs to them. It's something else. This is their big problem. They do not communicate with anyone. When you constantly communicate with one and the same group of people, you don't get, let's say, different and other information. And this is a problem when the leader, he has no information at all. This limited circle, this monopoly on communication is a very dangerous thing. So monopoly leads to degradation. And today, the degradation of the Russian Federation is a monopoly of power, a monopoly of communication. All of them reported Putin that everything is fine.
Добре, агентура вся розставлена, гроші всі заплачені.
Ми не знаємо, хто це зробив. Ну, тобто це інформація.
We don't know who did it. The information that Mr. Budanov said we will learn after our victory. That's why we stick to this position.
З точки зору іміджу, це був колосальний.
But from the point of view of the image, it was just a colossal hit against Russia. Because before that, some representatives of the Russian authorities, for example, Medvedev, wrote terrible posts there that any blow to the territory of Crimea would be considered the transition of the red line, and Russia would use nuclear weapons.
Росія що зробить? Застосує ядерну зброю. Коли був нанесений удар по
When there was an attack on the Crimean bridge, Medvedev deleted his tweet, deleted information in the Telegram, and didn't comment or say anything like that again.
Україна просто, по-перше, всьому світу, мабуть, продемонструвала.
Ukraine, first of all, has demonstrated to the whole world that Russia is very good at puffing up its cheeks. But when it comes to something real, it has that army which is disposed in Ukraine. And the second very important point, Ukraine has demonstrated for the whole world that no one was ever going to give up Crimea and is not going to.
Ніколи не збирався і не збирається.
Я вважаю події на Кримському мосту знак
I consider the fact with the Crimean bridge to be significant.
Москва. Це ті речі, які ніяк ніхто не очікував, що це можливо.
As well as the sinking of the cruiser Moskva. These are the things that no one expected. It breaks the self-confidence of the Russian invading forces. It is very important for us. For them, these are the biggest failures and the biggest disappointments of the leadership.
Але ще більше для них. Тому що для них це найбільше невдачі і розчарування в їх керівництві.
Дивіться, я в березні місяці сказав, що...
I said in March that we were dealing with the issue, and thanks God, we worked it out as needed.
Як необхідно.
Це не пов'язано з Кримським
It is not connected with the Crimean bridge. Such attacks are prepared at least for a month. All the statements that this is a revenge for the Crimean bridge are nonsense. Such an attack cannot be prepared in 2 days.
Тоді з жовтня
Since October, this is a new tactic. Putin has started a new phase of the war and changed his tactics.
заморозити Україну. До цього вони
They decided to freeze Ukraine, destroying the electricity system in Ukraine.
не будемо руйнувати ці об'єкти, вони нам не
Before that, they thought that they would conquer Ukraine and would not destroy these facilities. But the blackouts began.
І наприкінці жовтня
I have the data of opinion polls. At the end of October, after the first blackouts, people asked what to do. So they deprive us of light. We must resist or make compromises, some kind of peace agreement.
чи йти на компроміси, якісь мирні угоди.
More than 80% of Ukrainians said we must continue to resist.
70%. Ні, треба продовжувати спротив.
Наші люди досить проактивні.
Ukrainians are very proactive.
На радарах не буде бачити того шахета на низької висоті.
We know that if we don't see the Shahed at low altitude on the radars, then line 102 starts working.
Вони вже чітко кажуть, це
People inform about the direction movement. And at this time, the air defense workers transmit information to other units,
атакувати. І саме цей час працівники
which are immediately ready to shoot down. We received up to 140-150 messages from citizens every time.
Кожний такий обстріл ми отримали до 140, до 150 повідомлень від громадян.
Але думаю, все-таки якихось блекаутів там.
I think that blackouts or zombie apocalypses, as they wanted, will not succeed. However, this is competition of resources. They strike, we are being prepared.
Ми ремонтуємо, відновлюємося.
Наші енергетики.
Our power engineers.
Без надзвичайних ситуацій. Тому що
The emergency service. It is a huge job for them to clean the rubble, and people need to be rescued, fires to be extinguished.
І багато чого іншого. Там
Ministry of Infrastructure, restoration of roads, bridges, different departments demonstrated their work in a way that we did not expect.
Вони спрацювали так, як ми не очікували.
Навіть якщо
It is better without light, but without Russians. We can live in our own homes without light. Ukrainians have very successfully built this mechanism of adaptation and adjustment, which makes us stronger.
робить нас сильніше. Після того, як
After the HIMARS began to hit the Antonov Bridge, the fate of Kherson was decided.
доля Херсона була вирішена, тому що
There was no logistics, and if they had not withdrawn these troops would have ended up in a cauldron and they would have to surrender.
і їм би всім довелося просто здатися.
Ви знаєте, для мене показово було.
It was indicative for me that even the ashes of Potemkin, the monuments of Russian military politicians, were taken out of Kherson. The Russian Federation has clearly demonstrated to the whole world that the chances of returning to Kherson are not considered a priori.
Херсон не розглядається апріорі.
Всі жителі нашої країни
Ukrainians followed the public and saw what began to happen there.
відбуватися. Українські прапори на автівках, люди на вулицях, люди на центральній.
Ukrainian flags on cars, people on the streets, people on the central square. We have done everything to restore power supply. When
Орки, коли відходили, руйнували електроінфраструктуру. В будівлях великі дірки.
the Russians left, they destroyed the electrical infrastructure. There were big holes in the building.
40 людей. Ми до них кажемо, чим вам допомогти? Давайте ми вас вивеземо.
It was evening and people with children came out to meet us, about 40 people. They refused to be evacuated.
То ми точно вже нікуди не поїдемо. Все те ж саме я зустрічаю у всіх населених пунктах з 228.
The same is in all the occupied Kherson region. People do not want to go.
Одна і та ж сама, люди не хочуть їхати.
Thank you, Mr. President. We thank you.
How are you?
Доброго дня! Бажаю здоров'я! Як ви? Як ви? Дякуємо вам! Дякую.
І ніхто не сподівався.
No one hoped that people would come out with the Ukrainian flags.
Ходять з прапорами. Я коли відео бачив, у мене сльози були на очах. Коли там
When I saw the video, I cried. When the Russians shoot in the air and our guys just went in their direction.
нові каховці виходили з прапорами.
When they went out with flags in Novokakhovka in an occupied city. When Ukrainians stopped the tanks. For me, the people of Kherson are like 300 Spartans. And it's about the strength of resistance, and we will defend ourselves and continue to do so.
Для мене херсонці – це 300 спартанців. І це саме
Because of the mass shelling of Ukraine, the authorities are implementing the Point of Invincibility project.
ми будемо оборонятися, і ми будемо все одно це продовжувати робити.
Розгортаємо по всій країні і наш
We are also deploying a new project to support people, Points of Invincibility, throughout the country. More than 4,000 such points have already been prepared.
заплановано ще більше.
Це була програма президента.
The president's program, Points of Invincibility, is correct, unequivocally correct.
Ми підійшли трошечки інакше, мабуть, ніж всі.
We have different approach because it is necessary to have constant electricity, constant internet.
Ми поставили на всі пункти спочатку старлінки, а потім вже підвели ще оптоволокно.
We first installed Starlinks at all these points, and then we installed another optical fiber.
Ми поставили мікроволновки в кожну.
We have diesel engines and generators. We put microwaves in each point.
Чай, каву зробити. Поставили стільці.
Put 2 kettles so that people can make tea and coffee. We have powerful humanitarian aid with food for people and also children's food.
І там і пункти обігріву, і приходьте в райвідділки, і робимо.
We do everything to support people.
Підтримати людей. А люди почали розуміти, що
Therefore, such a unity of Ukrainian people is really very pleasant and inspiring.
сестра, мати або батька
Zelenskyy visited the frontline city Bakhmut.
українського народу, воно дійсно дуже приємно і надихає.
Маю честь.
I'm honored to be here today. Thank you.
Хочу привітати вас, подякувати.
Це взагалі безпрецедентний.
This is an unprecedented step. It goes beyond all limits.
Прямо не може президент виходити на він має бути знаходитись в центрі.
The president must be in Kyiv. He's a key figure. He cannot afford to go into trench to the front line, but he came there, made the words and said, "Guys, I'm with you."
Ламаються такі шаблони. Він приїжджає туди.
There's no need to make speeches, he said, with his presence.
Не треба говорити, не треба там навіть виступати.
I know what you are doing, and I, as the president of Ukraine, appreciated that feat of yours.
Я знаю, де ви, і я, як найвища особа держави, високо.
The whole country in my person is here with you.
Вся країна в моїй особі тут з вами. Він тисне руку, і тут більше не треба. Він навіть якби може.
The whole Bakhmut operation of Prigozhin has come to an end.
Це був би той самий сигнал для наших воїнів.
Because even if the president comes to Bakhmut,
Всій бахмутській операції Пригожина став кінець. Тому що якщо президент
it means that is Ukrainian city.
це значить і кожен, і я. Я тут буду.
Автограф.
I would like to give this award to Joe Biden from the armed forces for helping Ukraine. Mr. President, the Ukrainian soldiers.
Я це передав, але копію ми вам передамо, бо ви це ще заслужили. Добре, дякую. Добре, домовились.
Whom you awarded today wrote the best words to our brothers from the United States.
Побратимам з Америки всі самі прекрасні слова. Просимо вас передати по можливості.
Сьогодні Зеленський знищує повністю імідж Путіна.
Today, Zelensky is completely destroying Putin's image. What Zelensky did, no one ever dared to do. After that, on all Russian channels, there were only questions. Where is our Putin? Where is our Gerasimov? Where is Shoigu? Zelensky addressed the US Congress and presented the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, with the Ukrainian flag, which he received from the military in Bakhmut.
Що там творилось? Де наш Путін? Де наш Герасимов? Де наш Шойгу?
The President of Ukraine.
Ukraine didn't fall. Ukraine is alive and kicking.
Якщо президент воюючої
If the president can afford a foreign business trip abroad, this is primarily a political event.
в першу чергу політична подія. Він показує, що
He shows that everything is controlled in the country. His absence as the supreme commander-in-chief doesn't affect the course of events in any way.
не перебіг подій. Головне, давайте говорити про підсумки.
Let's talk about the results of the visits, which are more than convincing. It is from this time that the priorities of the United States regarding the provision of weapons to us have changed. We are talking about exclusively offensive types of weapons. This is actually a starting point.
Оце фактично знов-таки точка відліку.
Ця війна, вона підкреслила роль.
This war emphasized the role of the personality of the leader, and we see not only the confrontation between Ukraine and Russia.
Ми бачимо протистояння двох образів лідерів Володимира Зеленського.
We see the confrontation of two images. The leader Zelenskyy, as a politician of new formation, he is young, he is a person who grew up at the end of the 20th century. He is more technological than politician of old formation.
Він технологічний, він більш відкритий, ніж
Vladimir Putin is a former KGB officer.
колишній КГБіст.
Вас хотіла обійняти і подякувати, але не можна.
I'd like to hug you and thank you, but I can't.
Why? Well, go.
I won't be shot.
Дорогі українці, цей рік почався 24 лютого. Без передмов і прелюдій. Різко, рано, о 4-й годині. Було темно, було гучно, багатьом було складно, комусь страшно. Минуло 311 днів. Нам все ще може бути темно, гучно і складно. Але нам точно вже ніколи не буде страшно. І ніколи не буде соромно. Це був наш рік. Рік України. Рік українців.
Я завжди
I always parse the New Year greetings of the presidents. This is a very interesting political act with a lot behind it.
І європейських політиків це дуже цікавий.
As for Zelenskyy, it is always interesting. His speeches always reflect the transformation that he, as a person, is experiencing.
Завжди цікаві. Вони завжди відображають ту трансформацію.
In essence, him as a politician. This year's appeal is really amazing for Ukrainians.
Як політика. Але звернення цього року
These are not appeals. This is simply a statement of what we all have lived through.
це просто констатація того, що ми всі прожили.
And in this case, this appeal is a very powerful reflection demonstrating that Ukrainians are united by common experiences. They are united by a common grief.
Українці об'єднані спільними переживаннями. Вони об'єднані спільним горем і спільним досвідом.
Не було ніякого плану в Росії. В них не може бути плану.
There was no plan for Russia. They cannot have a plan. It's Russia. They don't plan. They only destroy. This is hate. This is a manifestation of hatred. They hate us very violently. That's all they say. We're here. These is our people. We are protecting them, and so on. They should have video demonstrating that there is no city. Everything is ruined. Can you understand the cynicism?
Освободили. Ви розумієте цинізм?
А
The rescue operation lasted almost 9 hours in Brovary city, Kyiv region. My condolences to all those who have lost loved ones.
Мої співчуття усім, хто втратив рідних, близьких.
Of course, this is a tragedy for the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Those people were patriots and were able to give the right impetus, the right direction to all units of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Their work will not stop there.
I can say for sure that the level of trust in the structure of the Ministry of Internal Affairs has become unprecedented. The level of trust in such a structure as the State Emergency Service in the second place after the Armed Forces of Ukraine. The 8th meeting at the Ramstein base in Germany.
Now is not the time to delay. Now is the time to dig deeper. The Ukrainian people are watching us.
As for Ramstein, I can say that it is very good that such a format exists. It has already started its systematic work.
We have launched our new $2.5 billion aid package to help Ukraine with its most critical battlefield needs today. Also air defense system as well as armored vehicles and other necessary ground defenses.
Providing tanks to Ukraine, providing anti-aircraft missile systems, the best in the world. We have today Of course, it's still not enough, but it will be.
В такій кількості, як нам хотілося би. Але воно буде. Основна наша мета – це F-16.
The main goal is F-16, and we are achieving it at different levels.
Сотні публікацій, інтерв'ю.
Hundreds of publications in the Arab world, in the USA, our pilots went there and met the senators.
Їздили завдяки нашій адвокаційній групі, поїхали пілоти.
I think this is important. Ukrainian defenders left Soledar.
Живий, який воює, зустрічається з конгресменом, який є військовий льотчик.
Ukrainian defenders left Soledar.
Зустрічі надзвичайно наближають до прийняття рішень.
Інформація про те, що події навколо Солидару.
The information of the journalist Butусov that the events around Soledar should be regarded as a military defeat of the armed forces of Ukraine is not true. Actually, around Soledar and Bakhmut, the armed forces of Ukraine completed the main task. For 7 months, the military operation continued on a possible advance, improvement of the tactical position of the Russian occupation forces. And the main thing is the victory of the armed forces of Ukraine, dealing maximum damage to enemy manpower. According to the Russians, the total losses of Wagner, namely they acted as the main striking force at the time of the operation in the Soledar and Bakhmut area, 40,000 dead. The total number of Wagner is approximately 50,000. We can say that the loss of Wagner during the battles for Soledar is about 80%. And now the main thing, to understand what Soledar is, the Russians call it almost as a second Stalingrad. For Ukrainians to understand is there is no defeat. The exact task of this offensive operation have not been completed. The Russians have not taken direct control of the Bakhmut-Soledar-Siversk track. That was the main goal of this military operation. Good morning, Mr. President. Greetings. Welcome. How are you? Fine, thank you. And you? Fine, thank you. Glad to see you.
Amazing to see you. I got a handshake here, too.
Безумовно, подія історична.
Certainly, this is an event of historic proportions. This is the first time a US president has visited a country at war. Barack Obama or George Bush came to military bases where the American military was located, and they were under the protection of American military contingents.
This
first visit of a US president to Ukraine in 15 years is the most important visit in the history of Ukrainian-American relations.
Українсько-американських відносин.
Другий момент. Пам'ятаєте, що напередодні 24 лютого 2022
Do you remember on the eve of February 24th, 2022, Joe Biden said that Putin's goal is Kyiv?
сьогодні чи в ці дні, коли
Today, when the US president visits Kyiv, capital of Ukraine, is evidence that the Ukrainian resistance through the event has produced results.
за допомогою Заходу дав свій результат.
1 year later, Kyiv stands, and Ukraine stands. Democracy stands. It's amazing that the whole world is watching this right now. This is the greatest land war in Europe in 3/4 of a century, and you are winning.
February 20th is the day of commemoration of the years of the Heavenly Hundred and the day of the beginning of the Russian aggression.
Пане президенте, я знаю, що
Mr. President, I know that a strong defense support package is expected for Ukraine, and right now such a weighty package is a signal that Russian attempts will not stand a chance.
що у російських спроб реваншу не буде шансів.
Together, we have transferred over 700 tanks, over 1,000 armored combat vehicles, over 1,000 artillery systems, over 2 million artillery shells, over 15 MLIS, air defense systems. All that helps to defend the country.
The United States has clearly declared that it is necessary to support Ukraine in carrying out a counteroffensive.
Але я хочу запевнити всіх, що
I, being a member of the operational headquarters,
штабу, хочу сказати, що військові підготовлені
want to assure everyone that the military is prepared in a completely different way.
дії супротивника. Повірте, там є
We took into account all the strategic actions of the enemy.
які дозволять просто знищити їх, якщо вони будуть намагатися сюди пройти.
Believe me, there are all the means of fortification that will allow to destroy them if they try to get here.
Ніколи в житті сюди б на Київ повторно людей би не посилав.
Ні, от ситуація розрізняється. Дійсно, нібито розмови те саме. Да.
The situation is different. The conversations are the same, and the Westerners, politicians say,
Можливий наступ, і те ж саме. Але і ми готуємо.
and intelligence agencies warn the same.
Що тоді була тривожність, непевність.
But we are also preparing.
країни. Зараз зовсім інша ситуація.
What is the fundamental difference?
Були рік тому. Сильніше і психологічно.
If then there was uncertainty about what would happen, whether the country would survive, now the situation is completely different.
Більшу частину
We are now stronger than we were a year ago, both psychologically and military, and Russia has not become stronger. It lost most of the professional military, lost the most combat-ready units. Of course, they want to continue the missile strikes, they want to drag out this war, but Russia cannot win this war.
виграти цю війну.
Зараз
What is happening now has actualized the identity of Ukrainians.
Раніше дослідження стосовно ідентичності доводить.
Previously, research on identity proved that Ukrainians have a very specific regional identity.
Я вважаю себе жителем Донбасу. Я вважаю себе
I consider myself a resident of Donbass, Galician, west and south of Ukraine.
оця регіональна ідентичність.
Here, this regional identity occupied the first places, then the national and local identity. The war changed this picture, and now the national and state identity is in the first place. We are all Ukrainians.
За перший
During the first year of war, Ukraine has returned half of the territories that Russia occupied after February 24th.
Збройні сили України.
The armed forces of Ukraine created the myth of the Spartan level.
Російська
The Russian army is not big, it's just very long.
Я можу сказати, що після цієї війни
I can say that after this war, there will be a completely different world.
буде новий формат у світі.
After our victory, there will be a new format in the world.
Це відбувається.
What is happening now is the final collapse of the USSR.
Це остаточне.
This is the final set point. Kazakhstan will be independent. Many countries will be independent.
Багато країн буде незалежним. Більш того, сама Росія.
Moreover, Russia itself will not be in the form in which it is. All this will start from the Caucasus, and then other countries will leave the territory of Russia.
Україна після війни це буде
Ukraine after the war will be a completely different state, people with a completely different legal consciousness, a completely different mentality.
для її розвитку і чудового майбутнього.
Колись Росія
Once, as part of the informational war, Russia came up with such a term as Russian Spring. And I would like it to be a Ukrainian spring next year.
Це була українська весна, тому що весна це розквіт.
Because spring is flowering, it's positive emotions. I want it to be like this next year, and I firmly believe in it.
Хочу, щоб так було і свято в це вірю.
I'm proud of Ukrainians. We are the great nation.
Великі народи великої України. Рік тому у цей день
Great people of great Ukraine. A year ago on this day, from this very place, at about 7 in the morning, I addressed you with a short statement. It lasted only 67 seconds. It contained the two most important things then and now. That Russia started a full-scale war against us, and that we are strong, we are ready for anything. We will defeat everyone, because we are Ukraine.
переможемо, бо ми – це Україна. За рік фактично кожен українець когось втратив. Батька, сина, брата.
In fact, every Ukrainian has lost someone in the past year. A father, a son, a brother, a mother, a daughter, a sister, a loved one, a close friend, colleague, neighbor, acquaintance. My condolences. Almost everyone has at least one contact in their phone who will never pick up the phone again, will never answer a text message, "How are you?"
Що більше ніколи не підніме слухавку. Не відповість на смс «Ти як?». Головна емоція, яку ми відчуваємо, думаючи...
The main emotion we feel when we think about Ukraine is pride for every Ukrainian man, every Ukrainian woman, pride for us.
За нас. Ми витримуємо всі погрози. Обстріли, касетні бомби, крилаті ракети, дрони камікадзе, блекаут, холод.
We withstand all threats, shelling, cluster bombs, cruise missiles, kamikaze drones, blackouts, and cold. We are stronger than that. It was a year of resilience, a year of care, a year of bravery, a year of pain, a year of hope, a year of endurance, a year of unity, the year of invincibility, the furious year of invincibility. Its main result is that we endured, and we were not defeated. And we will do everything to gain victory this year. Glory to Ukraine.
Аби цього року здобути перемогу. Слава Україні!